Well, good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Monday edition of the Dan Clements Show, a Christian political talk show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior, fighting for your right just to be an American. It is January 15th in the year of our Lord 2018. Remember, we're a hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control, and He does love you. And I'm broadcasting from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. A little chilly out there today. It started off today pretty cold. It's up almost 30 degrees now. Expected to get some snow tomorrow, so I think I might have the snowblower out tomorrow. I'm kind of hoping not, but you know, I'm like a Boy Scout. I am prepared for whatever might come along. Happy Martin Luther King Day, or Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Let me get that out so I'm not talking too quick today. And I titled the show today, "What Martin Luther King Jr. Means to Me." I'm going to be 56 this year. I don't remember too much about Martin Luther King Jr. while he was alive. I was just, when he passed away, when he was killed, I was only 6 years old, or almost 6 years old at the time. So I remember just foggy memories of it, but until I got into high school and got into American history and the civil rights movement, that I find out more about Martin Luther King Jr. and everything that he stood for. So, and he does. He means a lot to me, even though, you know, I wasn't the one having to go through the struggle. His fight is a universal fight for equality for everyone. And not that I try to speak for him today, but I do believe, just from the character that I see from his speeches and his interactions with folks and stuff like that, that he would be appalled at what's going on today as far as race relations and the animosity that is being ginned up in the name of racism, and I call it false racism today. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. This. It's not going to be a super long episode. I'm only going to share one article with you. I have a couple other things in the show notes page that you can go check out for yourself. Like I have a Larry Elder Prager University video, Black Fathers Matter. I have a link to the MLK letter from the Birmingham jail that he sent out April 16th, 1963. I'd been almost a year old when he did that. I have the PDF link, plus there's an audio link where he actually reads that letter, which is, I listened to that earlier today, and it's quite fascinating. And so I have that here for the show and for the show notes. So let's get the show started here. Today's show is being brought to you by Sears Part Direct. Folks, I know I know it's only Monday. However, the weekend, even though we just got over it, the next weekend is going to get here before you know it. And if you're like me, you always have something you need to fix or something you're planning on improving, but mostly something you need to fix. And if you're looking for parts and you can't find them locally, waste no more time. Go to the DanClementsShow.com and click on the Sears Part Direct widget about halfway down the page. You do that, it'll take you to the Sears Part Direct page. Make sure you have your serial number or your model number to whatever you're trying to, and make and model or make of it, and of whatever you have you're trying to work on. And just a little side note here, if the plate is somewhere on the piece of machinery or appliance where you have to stand on your head to get the numbers off of, quick trick here, use your smartphone and your camera app on it and take a picture of it. Easiest way I know how. But anyway, after you take that picture, then go over to SearsPartDirect.com through the Dan Clements Show website. That's my affiliate link. And look up your part number on it. When you go to checkout, put in the offer code you find there on my page, and you'll get 10% off your lawn equipment parts or appliance parts or more. And it has been my experience in the past that 10% off covers your shipping and handling for the most part. So, what are you waiting for? If you got that thing on your to-do list that needs to be fixed, that may be limping along, you need to get a new part for it, go to the DanClementsShow.com. Sears Part Direct, you'll be helping out the show, especially, hopefully, you like what you hear on the show here. All right, today's daily Bible reading comes from the book of Romans, chapter 1, verses 16 through 17. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first and also to the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith. As it is written, the just shall live by faith alone. Now, you remember last week we shared a verse out of Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, that actually defines what faith is. It's not some mystical, etherical type of feeling you get. Faith is the substance of things that we hope for and the evidence of things we haven't seen. And God has given us plenty of evidence in His Word that He is a keeper of His Word and that He delivers what He promises. Today's quote mail comes from John D. Barrow. There is no before the beginning of our universe, because once upon a time, there was no time. I like that. Pretty funny to me anyway. And today's short Bible lesson today isn't particularly a Bible lesson, but I thought it was a story that I needed to share with you, that someone shared with me on Facebook. An ex-lesbian who turned to Jesus expecting a baby. Ministry responds to brainwashing accusations. And this is by Stonian Zayamov at the Christian Post Reporter. And this was posted today. And I read through the story, folks, and it's a very interesting story, how this young lady went from being a lesbian to being a Christian and married now and expecting a baby. And just, I read through some of the comments, folks, and just some of the vitriol that was going on in the comments on this Facebook video was just, to me, they're uncalled for. And two, they were just, you can't read half of them, the vitriol. So, again, I encourage you to go read that. Be careful, the Twitter, or not Twitter, but the comment section of the video on Facebook. But folks, it is a fantastic read, and it's a fantastic listen to this young lady's journey, and and it shows the intolerance of those who support the LGBTQ agenda, whether they are LGBTQ or not. It just shows their total intolerance to anything that someone might do to in obeying God and leaving a sinful life behind. So, all right. What does Martin Luther King Jr. mean to me? And this is what I wrote as my little synopsis for it before I get into the article I want to share with you. I was almost 6 years old when Martin Luther King Jr. was shot to death on April 4th, 1968. I don't remember anything about that day and really only learned about him in American history in high school. I have admired MLK ever since then. His life was cut short by a hate-filled racist who couldn't see the future MLK was talking about. And for many today, the dream MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., if you guys, I just abbreviated it in there, was talking about has been forgotten. MLK's message wasn't meant to be just for blacks in the South, but for every freedom and liberty-loving American for all time. His was a timeless message, a universal message of peace, and how he, looked at things. His "I have a dream" speech was what I heard in high school, and I was like, wow, this man, and it was all in the context of he was assassinated, but his thoughts and the way he put them together, and I have a dream that one day that my children will live in a country where we're not judged on the color of our skin, but the content of our character. And how many people today do we have that are doing the exact opposite of what he was dreaming about? They're judging people on the content of their skin, or on the color of their skin, and not the content of their character. And every time somebody talks about merit-based, which is what Martin Luther King Jr. was talking about when he's talking about the content of your character, they scream racism. And it's a false racism that they're screaming, but they scream it nonetheless. And when you do this, when you proclaim racism falsely, you take away from what actually is racism. And I have this article I want to share with you today. Let me get over here on Facebook here, or on my feed over here. This is by Terrence P. Jeffrey over at cnsnews.com. He posted this January 19, 2015. MLK, a just law is a man-made code that squares with the law of God. And this is part of his, I said, I listened to the audio of him reading his letter from the Birmingham jail. And this was in part of that letter there. When Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was thrown in jail in Birmingham, Alabama on Good Friday, 1963, for marching to protest the city's racist segregation laws, he wrote a letter in which he explained the moral and religious foundation of law itself. Citing the Catholic saints Augustine, however you want to pronounce that, and Thomas Aquinas, King, a Baptist clergyman, said that a just law is one that comports with the law of God, and an unjust law is one that doesn't. And this is part of what he said in that letter. You express a great deal of anxiety over our willingness to break laws, King wrote. This is certainly a legitimate concern, since we do diligently urge people to obey the Supreme Court's decision of 1954 outlawing segregation in the public schools. It is rather strange and paradoxical to find us consciously breaking laws. One may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? King continued. The answer is found in the fact that there are two types of laws. There are just laws and there are unjust laws. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws. One has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. I would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all. Now, what is the difference between the two, wrote King? How does one determine when a law is just or unjust? A just law is a man-made code that squares with the moral law or the law of God. An unjust law is a code that is out of harmony with the moral law. To put it in the terms of St. Thomas Aquinas, an unjust law is a human law that is not rooted in eternal law or natural law. The Declaration of Independence, which invokes the laws of nature, nature's God, roots the founding of America in the same principle that the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. rooted the Civil Rights Movement. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, says the Declaration. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. In this letter from Birmingham jail, King affirms his belief that the Civil Rights Movement was based on the same values and principles as the founding of the United States, and that the Civil Rights Movement sought to redeem those values and principles in any area of American life in which they had too long been violated. One day the South will know that when these disinherited children of God sat down at lunch counters, they were in reality standing up for what is best in the American dream and for the most sacred values in our Judeo-Christian heritage, and thus carrying our whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in their formation of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, King said. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was right, and the principle that he articulated in his letter from Birmingham jail needs to be restated and reaffirmed in America today and returned to the center of our debates over the actions of government. And this is one of the many reasons why I admire Martin Luther King Jr. He was sitting in this jail. He could have been angry. He could have been bitter about his situation that he found himself in, but he wasn't. And I encourage you to go over, the PDF's hard to read because they're just photocopies of it, but I have an audio link up on the show notes page. Go over and listen to him reading his letter from the Birmingham jail. There's no bitterness in there. There's no resentment for why he's in jail. He lays out the reasons why he's in jail. He knows fully why he's in jail. And yet, he still has the mind about him to be gracious, is the only word I can think of. He was gracious while he was in the face of that adversity. I wouldn't want to sit in jail. But if I was going to sit in jail, I'd want to sit in jail upholding my principles, not because I broke the law. I want to be sitting in jail like Martin Luther King Jr. because I was protesting an unjust law, and not because I broke a just law. And so I agree that there are, and I think this is where we have to get back to in our country, there are things as unjust laws. As I was trying to explain to one of my Facebook antagonists about the Constitution and that, there are a lot of things that the federal government does today that are not authorized by the Constitution. Therefore, they are unjust because they are unjust laws. And the guy never did, I tried to explain to him, but he never did get the concept of that. And I fear there's too many people in our country today that will never get that concept of unjust laws. You know, what our laws are actually based on. Natural law, God's moral law, and on the Constitution. And if it's not authorized in the Constitution, the federal government doesn't have any business doing it, period. No matter how well-intentioned the people are, no matter how well-intentioned the lawmakers are, they have no business doing it. And just because something was legal, and in the South, segregation was legal, even though the Supreme Court, knocked it down in 1954, talking about segregating schools. But the South wasn't going to listen to the federal government. The South wasn't going to listen to the opinions of the Supreme Court. And there was one more time, and I'll leave the message with you here. There was one other time, there was a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. talking about the segregation laws in the South. He said, remember, in Hitler's Germany, everything that Hitler did was legal also. And you can't tell me that all the laws that were passed in Hitler's Germany were just laws. You just can't. And it just, again, Martin Luther King Jr., he amazes me. And I wonder what things would be like today if he wasn't assassinated all those many years ago in 1968, excuse me. Sorry about that. This has been the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior. Remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, folks, and God bless, and we'll see you in the next video.